everyone, this is Jack. Well, I'm so excited to show you this stackable worm bin in this video, and I'll show you how to make this one as well. So this one has 3 layers. It has a watering layer and it has a lid, and it's all made out of wood, which insulates the worms from heat and the cold. So let me show you how to make this one and how this works.
I'm starting with these fence pickets and I'm combining them like these to make an L like this.
Next, I'm cutting the ends to make the box. The ends go on the 2 sides to complete the box. The dimensions of this box is 26 inches by 5 feet. Next, I'm using a 2 feet by 5 feet hardware cloth. This has 1/2 inch openings. This allows the worms to move up and down. However, it keeps the worm castings and all the materials in place. The hardware cloth goes right in the box, which I then staple to hold in place. Then I add supporting braces on each end and in the middle to keep the hardware cloth in place. I then also add pieces of 1x2 at the bottom to lock in the hardware cloth in place so that it does not bow out. Then I use pieces of 2x3s in the corners to make the corners stronger.
So I've built 3 layers of this, and 3 of these boxes are ready. So let me stack them up and see how they fit. Well, these fit really nicely. They step right on top of each other and they have a really nice snug fit. And the next step is to create a layer for watering and then the lid on top.
Next, I'm making a frame for watering layer out of the 2x3s and 1x2s.
So here's a watering layer, and this goes right on top like this, and it provides water to the worm bin.
I drilled a hole to the side to insert the 1/2 inch tube, and then I attach the elbow to make the joint. I use the wire clips to hold the 1/2 inch tube in place, and then I also use these clips to hold 1/4 inch tube in place as well.
So here you go. I put the drip tube all along the watering layer. So the watering layer is done, and now let's put it all together and let me show you how it works. So this is the area where I'm going to put the worm bin. This is on the side of the greenhouse, and this area gets lots of shade over the summer, and this is a perfect location for earthworms.
First, I'm layering stepping stone on the ground as a base. This makes a firm base for the worm bin.
Now the reason why I have stepping stone as a base is because of observation. I've observed that worms tend to hide under rocks, either bricks or stones, either in extreme heat or in extreme cold, in both situations. So I want to have a base for them that they actually like to hide under naturally. So this serves as a really good purpose. So if it gets too hot, they can hide under the stepping stones. If it gets too cold, and these stepping stones will shield them from the heat and cold both. So the first layer goes on the bottom, right on top of the stepping stones. And I already have some of the worm castings and the compost that I had from a previous bin. I still have a part of my previous bin right there with worms in them, but I wanted to add this layer for worms to be comfortable and also have something familiar, and all the broken down pieces of kitchen scraps and stuff that has fungi growing on it, because worms love to eat fungi, and also have lots of compost in there to munch on as well. Also add some pieces of stale bread, bagel, muffins. Make sure they don't have any oil in it and no salt, and then you can add it to your worm bin. They are perfectly fine. Worms actually love them.
I'm also adding a layer of dead leaves. Worms love dead leaves as well. Naturally, in forests, they actually forage on all the fungi, microbial activity that grows on all the fallen leaves. And next, I'm also going to add all the contents of my previous worm bin as well, along with all the worms.
So I found lots of grub worms in my previous worm compost. And these grub worms will eat the roots of your plants. It will eat your sweet potatoes, your potatoes, and they will destroy your garden. So all of these grub worms are going to become chicken food.
So I dumped all the grub worms right there, and look who's here. There you go. Getting the worms.
And look who joins the party. Everybody's here. If you like seeing chickens, we also have a second channel called Daisy Creek Animals, on which we're posting videos on chickens, ducks, our dog Lily, and lots of other farm animals as well. We'll be building a pond and keeping fish as well. So there's a lot more coming on the second channel called Daisy Creek Animals. So subscribe to that if you're interested. The first layer is full with compost, stale bread, previous worm castings, and lots of kitchen scraps. So after completely filling the first layer, now it's time to add more earthworms. And these earthworms are sent to us by Uncle Jim's worm farm. So thanks to Uncle Jim for sending these earthworms. Well, here's the bag. And I opened it and there are lots of worms in there. All right, let's add these worms into this worm bin. Wow, look at these. Oh, there are lots of earthworms. Whoa, there's a whole ball of earthworms right there. 2,000 earthworms. They look pretty dry because they lose a lot of body weight when they're shipped. They are in transition for about 2 days, and they usually eat half their body weight in a day. So they're severely dehydrated right now. So I gotta feed them and I gotta water them. But look at all of these earthworms. They just wanted to be out. They were waiting to be fed, to be released, to be out in the open. These are lots of earthworms. Okay, let me add a little bit of water to hydrate these earthworms. They're severely dehydrated, so gotta add a little bit of water. I already have lots of compost and it's all wet. I have wood shavings down there, so that's all going to help, and they can start munching on right away. There you go. Whenever somebody sends us stuff, I always give them a shout out, and I always include a link to them in the description of the video. So if you like to order Uncle Jim's worms, you can find the link in the description of this video.
Next, I'm placing the layers on top of each other to stack up the worm bin. And then I'm adding the layer for watering. And on top of that, I'm adding the lid, which is just a piece of plywood.
You might have noticed that I do not close my worm bin from the bottom. That's because in case it gets too hot or too cold inside the worm bin, I want the earthworms to go underneath into the ground, because naturally they live underground. So they will be in their natural habitat rather than dying out in the worm bin if the conditions become unfavorable. So having these stepping stones helps to keep the worms where they are, so they don't venture out, because they love being underneath these stepping stones because it protects them from the heat and the cold.
Now the reason for building a separate layer for watering is that you can move any of these layers on top of this watering layer. That way you can let your worm casting dry out, and all the earthworms are going to go from the top layer down to the bottom layers to try to get to moisture. That way you can harvest worm castings without actually going through them and without actually sifting out the worms.
So you can go from this configuration to removing the lid, removing the watering layer, and then choosing any of the layers that you want to dry out and remove all the worms. You can set that aside, then put the watering layer on, put the topmost layer on top, and then cover it with the lid. This way the topmost layer will dry out and all the earthworms will go underneath, and you will have your worm casting ready to use.
Now this makes extracting worm castings much easier. You can just let the top layer dry out for about 2 to 3 days and all the earthworms will go underneath. You can just take the top layer, add it to your garden or your raised bed, and that's it. The most difficult task in keeping earthworms have been extracting worm castings, and this makes it much easier. This idea came to me from keeping honeybees, because honeybee hives have layers. You can just add a super on top, which makes it very easy to manage honeybees, and this makes it very easy to manage earthworms and extract worm castings.
You can remove the lid and the watering layer and keep adding kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, and all sort of material that you need to add to your worm bin in each one of these layers. And all of these earthworms will move upwards and keep devouring all of this to make worm castings.
I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you can make a stackable worm bin like this one, and I'll see you in another video.